So I'd like to welcome all of you to the Stockbridge Library's online poetry program. We are finishing out our third year of the program. It was started in 2020 by John Gillespie, who will be hosting the program today. At the time, John was the president of the board of the Stockbridge Library, Museum, and Archives. And he just has a penchant and passion for poetry, and he's put this together for all of us to enjoy. John, thank you so much. In this third season, our theme is inquiry and the power of poetry in both asking and answering questions. And today we have with us poet Cathy Hailey. Cathy is a native of Northern Virginia and teaches as an adjunct lecturer in Johns Hopkins University's online MA in Teaching Writing program. She graduated from Duke with a degree in English, and she has an MA in English from George Mason University. She has been published in the New Verse News, Poetry Virginia, Written in Arlington, Stay Salty, which is funny, Life in the Garden State, Poetry for Ukraine, Family, and Nova Bards. She has a forthcoming poem in the Poetry Society of Virginia Centennial Anthology, and her chapbook, I'd Rather Be a Hyacinth, was published this past January. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us. John, thank you for hosting. And I'd like to turn the program over to the two of you.
Yeah, Wendy, thank you in the library for hosting. And Cathy, Tracy, I sometimes start out with a little bit of humor. I mean, Cathy's been to so many shows. She's heard all my bad jokes. I don't have a lot of material today.
That's okay.
I have to just play it straight. So once again, Cathy, I know that's going to throw you off your game. That sounded like a little bit of humor. So now, Cathy, welcome to the program. And, we always start, what does inquiry mean to you?
So for me, inquiry is about embracing curiosity and wonder and living with that perspective. As I've been thinking about this for a while, as I've listened to other poets in the series, I realized I've had many influences that have taken me in this direction, and I just like to name three of them. One is Leonardo da Vinci. His book, or the book Michael Gelb wrote, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, talks about the 7 principles of thinking. The first one, curiosity. I'll skip the Italian and just go with the translations. Independent thinking, refine your senses, embrace uncertainty, art and science, whole brain thinking, mind-body care, and interconnectedness. And I've used this book just for myself, but also in teaching high school students, creative writing students, just ways of opening up their curiosity, opening up their thinking. And Da Vinci is also important because of the Da Vinci Center at Virginia Commonwealth University, where both of my kids went. They place students from different disciplines in groups in order to solve problems that come from the community, businesses, government. And because of the interdisciplinary approach, they're able to come up with answers that individual discipline students cannot. And a second influence is Sanford Line, a poet and teacher. He's the author of Writing Poetry from the Inside Out. And I met Sandy teaching students here in the Washington area. He passed away since, but he first taught me the approach of the Chinese poets and the idea of being present, beginning to write by describing something in your surroundings, being honest and open, and then allowing any thoughts to come in, not pushing them away because they seem to stray from the focus you originally had. And then embracing connections. And then the third person I want to mention is Noah Scanlon, or Scallon. He has an obsession with creating. The author of Skull a Day, after creating 365 skulls in a year. And he's continued to do other projects like that. When my daughter was at VCU, her professor required them to do Project 54, Band-Aids, and they had to create with Band-Aids 54 times in the semester. And this type of project just puts inquiry at the center of every day. Recently, I read an op-ed in the Washington Post, and this friend of mine, also a poet, Ken Conklin, was quoting Harry Lieberman, the artist, and said, "The reason I'm living so long is before I go to bed, I imagine what I will be painting the next day." He died in 1983 at the age of 106. And for me, that really does ring true. I know when I focus more in National Poetry Month to write a poem a day, that I can often go to bed with just a seed and wake up, ready to create a poem the next day. And even though I might write every day, other times during the year, I'm not always drafting what I would call a poem each day. But putting that effort in seems to yield good things in the end.
That's good. Listen, lots of fantastic influences. Yeah, very nice, very nice. So, yeah, the Band-Aid thing. We need 3 hours to dive into the whole Band-Aid thing, and I'd end up having to do a project, so I'm busy after this. So,
on the side, I'll tell you
so
more.
what poems could you share that maybe demonstrate that curiosity? Because that seems to be the main theme that I'm hearing is stay curious, be curious.
Yeah, and I think also, the specifics about questions, they come by being curious, and they come sometimes at the beginning, more often in the process of writing. And so I can share some that do both. And I'll start with my chapbook, I'd Rather Be a Hyacinth. This is the cover. I made a collage for the cover. So I'm going to start with the poem that gives the book its title, I'd Rather Be a Hyacinth, but the title of the poem is In Life. Hyacinths, purple, baby blooms adding stress, weight, instinct maternal. Tulips variegate, orange yellow, dancing coy above troops of green. Singular pride, joy, even with no breeze. In life, I'd rather be a hyacinth, embrace the role of mother, live the labyrinth, loved by a brood of florets, very center of orbits. And so, yeah, that was one where, just being present in the garden, where I started just describing, and suddenly I was writing about more than just the flowers. And I'll read two more from the chapbook because they're very short. Seduction is the next one, and it has an implied question. Seduction. Bluebirds bring pie tin, lured by raspberry fruit bars, walnuts, plumped raisins. Like textile bazaars, sequined, indigo feathered, glint sun flare, snow glare, flying untethered, blue variations so rare. Breasts beige and ochre, contrast enhancing, turquoise tail feather flicker, shyly accepting entrapment and seduction for my artistic passion. So underlining that is, whether I should feel guilty, whether it's unethical to lure and trap birds so that I can take pictures of them and write about them. But I decided I, at least for the moment, was okay with it.
Yeah, we won't report you. You're in a no harm zone. So
Thank you.
do the birds eventually escape, or hopefully?
Well, so they weren't trapped, really, just entrapped by, by being lured by these fruits that I discovered they were attracted to.
Yeah.
more so in a sense than, just generic bird seed or, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a fun experiment. And then I'll read Under the Sun, which is the first poem in my chapbook. And it's one of the earliest in the book, actually. It's an acrostic poem based on a painting that was paired with another artist. And the painting was of large golden vases, Hellenic style. Under the Sun, after Roberta Thowell's Golden Urns. Helios ascends, bursting urns of golden fire, blazing graceful winds. Rhapsodizing lyre song, strummed by Apollo's hand, transcends bound canvas. Mirrored vases stand, secular iconostas, framing truth's tableau. Are laurel leaves live when captured on urns glow? Do chariots rise? Mimesis awaits motion, artistic contradiction. So the painting itself was, what I was describing initially, but then that idea of, what's painted on an urn, when you see life in the Keatsian sense, looking at that, is that life or is that imitation of life? And in a way, as an artist, as a poet, it's intermingled, right? I feel like I'm always trying to recreate or preserve or imitate life in my poetry.
Well, Perry, Perry, anything Greek, Perry loves. So he loved the last poem, and Michael loved the two poems before that were so descriptive. So here's my my throwaway question. What is it like? What was it like for your kids when your mom is a poet?
So actually,
and Tracy, we should have a couple of their kids on the show to quiz them, but I just thought of that question now. So
yeah, well, I was working with the Northern Virginia Writing Project summer camp, Student Summer Institute, for many, many years. And so as soon as my children were rising fifth graders, they started going to writing camp for 2 weeks in each summer, which eventually led them to entering the creative writing program at my high school. So I actually taught them each during high school for 3 or 4 years. And because of it, they became writers. Now, Alexandra is the daughter we unfortunately lost in a car accident, and that will come up in later poems that I read, but she was very successful as a poet, English major, and poet laureate of Prince William County, Virginia. When she was 22, she was crowned. So somehow she seemed to know that she had to do great things quickly in her life. I mean, I know that sounds a little strange, but she did live life in the fast lanes, so to speak, and did accomplish an incredible amount by the time she was 26. And Neil still writes a lot, but he's more of an entrepreneur, more of the interdisciplinary type creative, engineering and design and writing. He's not doing a lot of poetry right now, but I haven't given up that he might go back to it.
And then that's it, just 2 kids?
That's all. Mm-hmm.
That's nice. That's great. I like the 5th grade. I don't know. I was trying to learn how to swim or something, so I missed the writing. It was like, remember Kool-Aid? We used to have Kool-Aid at camp all the time. So yeah, there was no writing. There was just capture the flag, all that kind of stuff.
I remember that one. I think if kids got to write in a fun environment like we provided in that camp, or even in the creative writing program, then they'd be great writers earlier on without many of the hangups that they come out of school with because they're trying to jump through hoops.
So what was the biggest challenge when you were teaching creative writing? Was it I don't, I'm not know if I'm asking the question the right way. Were the students able to engage it? I just don't know. I'm just trying to figure out. I think it's a really special time for people. I'm just wondering what were the challenges and
Well, one of the challenges would be that, you have a lot of creative students in one classroom. It's not exactly, quiet, people in straight rows waiting for me to, engage them with all the information they need. It was more of a workshop, constantly, interactive,
yeah.
and, and often, louder than you would see in a regular classroom. Even my own English classroom, there was definitely a difference. But um, really, I loved all of it because they were, once given the opportunity to think for themselves and know that they could write what they wanted and not have so many restrictions like they'd been used to having in other courses. They embraced it and ran with it. Some of my students could write poetry in 10 minutes that would astound you. I'm a slower writer. It takes me a lot of revision. So I'm always enamored with people who can turn out something that's beautiful in just 10 minutes of writing.
No, great. So why don't you share a few more poems?
Okay. I'm going to share two that aren't in the chat book and also aren't specifically related to my daughter, because one of my manuscripts that I'm working on now is more related to her. So this first one is actually another ekphrastic poem after Joseph Cornell's Medici Princess, 1952. He did a lot of those boxes with different things inside of them. I'm fascinated with them. And this one is called Shadow Box. She's encased in a box. I stare as if watching TV, the square elements between her and the wooden frame appearing as buttons for sound and image. If I put a coin in the slot, will she move? Will she speak? Will she tell us who wrapped her neck in pearls, who draped her shoulders with a leaf-shaped pendant that plunges to her waist? Will she tell us who enslaved her, who stole her away from childhood, alienated her from family, separated her from journal and feathered pen, the means to broadcast her story to the world? What was Joseph Cornell thinking when he closed the mahogany box around her soul? So I read that one because half of the poem is questions. But that's often, I think, what we do when we're surprised by or confused by a piece of artwork, and leaving it open to the audience for interpretations as well, rather than trying to answer it.
Yeah, nice, very nice.
And this one also includes questions, but this one was inspired by something during COVID, and it includes an italicized line from Emma Lazarus's poem, Long Island Sound, Mary's Son in the Grave Sky. The title of the poem is Dirt to Dirt. I don't read this that often because it seems like it's specific to a time, but because of the inquiry, it gives me the opportunity. Yep. Dirt to dirt. Wooden caskets stack up neatly like a 3D puzzle in long, narrow trenches, mass graves on Hart Island, off the Bronx and Long Island Sound. Imagine Emma Lazarus's shock seeing images captured by drones of her beloved sound. No, Mary's Son in the grave sky. Unclaimed bodies. Why are they unclaimed? Are they unidentified, misidentified, lost? Have their next of kin also succumbed to the virus? So many questions, but also surprise. This process is not novel like the coronavirus. For 150 years, bodies have stacked up here at the rate of 25 per week. Not only those unclaimed, but those too poor to pay. This Holy Week, on Maundy Thursday alone, 40 dead arrived in a single day. Stacks surrounded by dirt await closure. Who will shovel the ceremonial clods? Who will operate the machinery to push massive amounts of dirt to close the grave? Cover it up, name it. Where are the loved ones? Where is the love? Where is the heart on this island named Heart?
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Very good. So Cathy, let's do this. Let's take our usual little break for the audience to ask some questions and or comments. So anybody have something they want to ask or share? As I said, this is the time. Let's make the poet sweat. Let's not let her off the hook. Cathy, every time I said that, Cathy would ask a question. So I feel like Cathy, what goes around comes around. I'm waiting for something to come flying out of the universe.
I'm ready.
You ready? That's okay. Just
Well, I could do a couple more and then we could try again.
I'm sure Perry. No, Perry's got one. Listen, Perry is always the go-to guy.
Yeah. In your book, Cathy, can you talk a minute about how you chose the sections that you divided it into?
Yeah. So I use the Italian musical terms morenda and animando as two section divisions. And more or less because I was going from lighter to darker or in the first section and then darker to lighter in the second section. And kind of the way that we deal with trauma, we start in a lighter place and then trauma occurs and darkens our spirits. And then we're able to find something to make resiliency possible and move forward. And the funny thing is that the book was actually in 3 sections when I sent it to the finishing line press, and they accepted it that way. But afterwards, working with the Virginia Poetry Collective, I changed the order completely. I had all the ballet poems together in the middle. And someone suggested, it was Angela Dribbin, that I might want to intermingle them. And so that hadn't even occurred to me. I was really happy that she suggested that because I feel like the book is better this way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah. Michael, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question, and thank you, Cathy, for reading today. And I certainly appreciate your poetry and your beautiful images and the sound, particularly in the first 2 poems.
Thank you.
And they're so, they're not lengthy poems. They're very short, compressed, and so much in them. But I'm curious now because Perry asked about the manuscript. In your revision process, did you actually go back and is part of your revision process to go through each poem again and did you change them up significantly, or was it at this point kind of a, they felt right and it was just a matter of kind of giving it one more look?
So there were a few that I changed more than just editing, but most of them editing. However, with the ballet poems, I had originally titled them after the ballet movements that I had experienced. And I had watched 10 episodes of Moscow Festival Ballet, each 10-minute long, segments. And believe it or not, took notes while I was at the theater and then went home and wrote over time these 10 poems. But I just titled them by the names of the dances in the program. And so suddenly when I was going to intermingle them through the book, I realized that they would be better served with titles that also sort of showed the thematic connection that I was seeing between that poem and maybe the one before or after it. And so I retitled all of them. Yeah, so, well, I mean, sometimes I might have, changed a couple words or changed a few phrases. A couple I did change more significantly.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. It's just
So-
it's interesting going lighter to darker and then to some type of resiliency or redemption or something at the end like that.
Thank you. And the poems are also haiku sonnet form, which is something that not a lot of people are familiar with, but Tom Hunley, I believe, invented them. He writes about it in the Poetry Gymnasium. And I discovered it and then started teaching my students. So then, of course, I had to write some myself. And then that led me to, actually, it was the ballet poems that I started with. And so once I wrote a couple, I had to write the rest of them to go with the 10 movements. And that got me into the practice of writing them.
What are the rules?
So basically, it's the rhyme scheme of the Shakespearean sonnet, which is counterintuitive because each stanza is a tercet because they're each haiku. The last couplet you can call a tanka, joining it with the previous haiku. But I didn't. It's interesting because I had a radio interview with Ethelbert Miller not that long ago, and one of the things he questioned me about was using enjambment. So with haiku, you typically think of something that is inclusive in the 3 lines and that's it. But somehow the form of the haiku sonnet, just for me, like invited me to not always stick to end stopped stanzas. And so I did use enjambment across stanzas. I don't know where Tom Hunley would stand on that. I don't know him. I haven't met him. But I think that, when you try out a form, that you also get to adapt it in the way that you want to. Lots of people are doing it with forms that were established thousands of years ago. So, but I encourage you to try it. It's challenging at first, but fun.
Oh, I'm going to. I'm excited.
Yeah. So one last question. Karen asked, what is on your poetic agenda?
Well, that's interesting. I have a book signing this weekend, and I have I have to finalize this, but I think I'll be reading at McCall Gallery, which is a tiny gallery in Manassas, Virginia, in the Old Town section, where there are beautiful paintings, and where Denise McCall encourages local poets to come and read.
Great, fantastic. Good. No, great questions and comments, everyone. So Cathy, let's continue. Is there another theme you like to pursue? Not a theme. I mean, I know we're playing around with inquiry, but you've had, I guess, a couple of different offshoots in what you've shared with us. Is there another avenue you want to pursue? I mean, obviously you have 200 poems to read, so we have plenty of time.
Right, till midnight.
Tracy, get off the hook. You only had to read like 15 or something.
So I'm going to read 2 that are early in my writing about losing my daughter, and but at a place where I was finally able to write about grief in a way that was positive, as opposed to just being in the depths of it. So this is a poem that I wrote using an epigraph from Gregory Orr, who I think is a really good poet to turn to when you're struggling. And I used his line, "This is the reciprocity of love that outwits death. Mourning doves." And it does begin with a question that I go on to try to answer. Mourning doves, are they attracted by the assortment of nuts and berries, or the array of feeders hanging from rails and rhododendron? Do they seek company, brighter in color, faster in flight? The cardinals, familiar and familial nesters in our yard. She, translucent red, submerged under muted brown, camouflaged. He, flaunting festive feathers crowned, a perennial showstopper, narcissistic as he faces his reflection in car and patio mirrors. The goldfinches, brilliant yellow, tuxedo trim, black cap and tails, flitting from one feeder to another, pecking for seeds rung to rung, soaring into the apple tree barely visible on its highest branches. Or are they our trinity of mourning doves, mottled and mellow, drawn to us by her autumn passing and the grief we suffer? Is their presence foreboding, preying on our dread of death, encouraging a rage contained within but rarely released? Loss sings through coos of mourning doves, echoing coo, coo. Is their cooing a lament for her or a gift to mourners? A promise that our heartbreak is heard, our sorrow perceived. Akul, say the Greeks. I listened and I understand. The doves, integral to life's mysteries, their birdline to the heavens, well documented in sacred stories and myths. Slow and gentle, mourning doves breathe calm into the garden, a contrast to the kerfuffle of crows circling in search of prey. Are they peacemakers, justices of the garden's menagerie of
This is our final attempt to reach you to qualify for free health coverage.
not just cardinals, goldfinches, but downy woodpeckers, blue jays, squirrels, chipmunks, foxes, faces ringed with fur like lions' manes? We see her in all these creatures. We hear her in their songs. We recognize her vibrant energy as they race along the creek. They remind us, and she brings us joy within our gloom. The mourning doves are justices of balance, purveyors of peace. Their accompaniment brings hope, restoring harmony in chaos. The mourning doves remind us how to live, how to love.
Wow. Very nice.
And I have another one. I mean, in a way, it's similar, but it's from a later period of time. And also, like, looking outside and finding some respite and seeing the beauty of nature in order to, reconcile yourself in grief. It's called Visit. And you'll hear the description of this bird, but it just seemed like a gift from, somewhere. I'd never seen one like this before. Visit, orange cardinal, unmasked anomaly, radiates iridescent tangerine feathers in a variegated fan, mottled with cream, splotchy as a Jackson Pollock, a fanciful dreamsicle reminiscent of childhood laughter. Patient and polite, or coy, our newcomer waits her turn at the feeder, a chance to snatch a sunflower seed, then dances with flourish. Tail feathers tick-tock, keeping time, brightening gray skies as a creamsicle summer wanes. She crosses from apple tree to rhododendron to the thick of forest oaks, a slalom course of undulating flight. Only inches from tree line, she redirects, swoops up, alighting on an iron perch or wooden rocker rail, observing a quiet moment as if she belongs. You're extraordinary, I tell her, ethereal being, elegant, graceful, rare and elusive, my obsession. This cream of a bird, celestial gift or conjuring of poetic imagination? A bird within a dream, summoned by grief, invites us out of darkness to fall in love with orange in the month before we face the forever sadness of jack-o'-lanterns, pushing us to smile, even in mourning. I hear her song, recognize the rhythm of a revered name, 4 syllables, accent on the third, the parlay of veiled poetry, a cherished gift. Expectation grows, a desire to connect. She brings ephemeral joy, even as brown leaves fall, dotting a still green lawn, the consequence of drought. until she's lost again in the density of poplar leaves. A thin veil separates us, thinnest in the outdoors. I welcome this fleeting exchange, corporeal, secure in a spirit that is true, alive. I seek solace in the holes in the sky and wonder, will she visit again? Will we know her if her mask is more defined? Or will she move beyond? How many souls exist within her?
Woo.
I know.
I think I should sit on your back porch for a while. There's a lot of interesting stuff that happens out there.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's actually, I've been staying with my mom for several years, and it's actually her front yard that's the main setting. And until I retired, was suffering from grief, the pandemic, I didn't have as much appreciation for the creatures around me. I didn't have time as a full-time teacher all the time, even though I might have intended to be that way, observant, giving myself time to be quiet in nature. I definitely got a lot of time for that with all those things happening at once, the retirement, the pandemic, and the loss.
Oh, very nice. No, you can't see it, but I can look out the window here in my little backyard, and yesterday there were two birds just walking around, and one of them looked at me like, is that guy still on the phone? Yeah, they're like, what's he doing? No, it's nice it does get you out of your own stuff when you observe and engage, insects, flowers, birds. Yeah, no, just very, very intriguing. Yeah. What ended? How many souls does she have inside her?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
Thank you.
So let's take another little mini break. And does anyone have any questions or comments? You don't have to, but we like to do this a couple times a session. Well, I guess I should ask, are there any ones that aren't, like birds, flowers, trees? Are there,
Well, Now let me read one.
I know I'm joking. I'm just joking. I'm just but part of it is I'm wondering how you
Yeah.
engage a person that maybe in your poetry.
So let me read this one also, since Perry's here. It's called Enough. And it's for my great grandmother, Mariho, also known as Megali Yaya, great grandmother. Enough. She hid oranges in top dresser drawers in her bedroom beside the kitchen at 238 Beach 85th Street, Rockaway Beach, New York, to ensure she'd have enough for herself. With families piling in on weekends, hungry children underfoot all week, even bushel baskets of fresh fruits and vegetables Yaya and Papu brought in on Fridays from the farmer's market emptied quickly. She didn't ask for much else, a rocking chair on the porch, where she sat with the blind mother of my great uncle, a few chores completed by her grandchildren, washing dishes, my aunt washed, my mother dried, sweeping floors, battling sand coming in from the beach on wet feet and shoes. After chores, the cousins headed to the boardwalk to play skee-ball at Playland, buy frozen Milky Ways at a corner shop, but not until she gave them advice. Skamacha sasdeka, she'd say. Keep your eyes looking in 10 directions. The fear of a refugee instilled in her, the displacement from her Anatolian homeland fresh in her mind, her husband murdered, her youngest son taken, never to be heard from again. But she kept fond memories close to her heart, a home in Katopanaya, bordered by mountains and bluest sea just off the Aegean coast of Turkey, where grapevines flourished, promising tender leaves to wrap rice mixtures, bathed in lemon for dolmades, grapes to produce wine and ouzo, fruit trees loaded with oranges, their sweet scent stirred up by sea breezes, inviting travelers to inland orchards. In peaceful times, inter-ethnic, interfaith coexistence was possible, when fusions of cultural traditions were born, finding more in common with spanakopita, moussaka, and baklava, slight variations carried across continents, passed through generations by the diaspora. If politics and power could be left out of the conversation, peace might be possible. War rarely starts with the people living side by side, despite differences, even if pride leads to confrontations. Outside catalysts usually intervene, and what ignites so easily is so difficult to extinguish. Why must the cycle continue? Haven't we had enough?
Well, that was a long family trip.
Yeah, so, it is completely about family, but as I was writing the ending, I was also thinking of Ukraine. And in so many ways, the problems politically in the early 20th century in Turkey are parallel to the relationship between the Russians and the Ukrainians, and others in that region as well. At times, and personally and culturally friendly, and politically, always in a mess, unsolvable seeming. And I actually wrote a poem just recently about, sort of about the Ukrainian, not the Ukrainian, sort of about the Armenian genocide, because it was Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day just not too long ago. And I happened to catch a congressional hearing where they were, mentioning it in order to make sure that, it's reinforced after Joe Biden's, declaration that he was acknowledging that 1.5 million Armenians killed at just after the turn of the 20th century, to continue to acknowledge it each year on that commemoration day. And I learned that they had a symbol at their 100th year of the flower for forget-me-nots. And I didn't know anything about that. I don't know of a specific symbol that, is associated with the loss of Greeks at the time. But the Greeks and Assyrians and other nations are also included in that acknowledgement, although the Armenians were the ones with the biggest losses.
Yeah.
Like, I can read that one. It's called
Yeah.
Never Forget. Never forget. I'd like to fill my yard with forget-me-nots, common blue wildflowers with faces of 5 lobes, myosotis, some more rare in shades of violet. I'd like to fill my world with plants rooted in soil, leaves like fuzzy mouse ears that squeak truth, petals that please with hexing hues of sky, French blue, periwinkle, purple, lavender, dark centers like pupils, ringed yellow, lighting a path forward as pods disperse seeds for next season's blooms. Forget me not. Just a short one, but kind of related.
No, it's great. It's great. Poems all start out one way and end somewhere else, which is what a lot of poems do. But yours are very nice, very nice. Good. I know I'm asking you to read a lot, but
That's okay. I'm okay with that.
yeah, you should continue where you want to go.
Well, since I started taking us out into the world, how about I read another one? Sometimes inquiry starts with being haunted by an image or something in the news or on TV. And I think it's maybe in another week, it'll be the anniversary of the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and I wrote something. I started writing something right after that, and then it's continued to be worked on, up until yesterday, let's say. I just keep, every time I read it, I'm tinkering with it. I'm not sure if it's finished, but I'll go ahead and read it. It's called River of Grief. 1. In Uvalde, County, Texas, the Leona River rises north, flows 83 miles. For decades, irrigation carried its water to local farms until it overflowed in 1894, destroying a railroad bridge, bringing ruin to farms. Drought in the 1950s dried it up, exposing remnants of indigenous peoples. The Leona rose again. Did you know even inland rivers can be influenced by the moon? Scientists call it semi-diurnal oscillation. Cite the Leona as evidence. Tides rising and falling twice each day. 2. Longing runs long like a river, levels rising one day, diminishing the next. The ache doesn't go away. The river traveling to the heart ebbs and flows, an inner pressure rising until a dam breaks, releasing a torrent as each new death occurs, especially the death of a child. 3. Today, my river spills over as I hear parents mourn 4th grade children, a girl who painted herself with blood after reaching a hand into her friend's gunshot wound, playing dead to survive. Another identified by her green Converse high tops, decorated in ink, a heart on the toe. I hear shrieks and screams of parents desperate to save children, to know their fate, only to be fought off by police. 4. When a mother and daughter arrive in Uvalde from Houston, I feel my river overflow, arteries, capillaries tightening, heartache increasing. They drove from Houston to place flowers and a stuffed animal beside 19 crosses for children, 2 for teachers. They knew no one in Uvalde, but understood the devastation of burying a child only 3 years since their loss, son and brother gunned down by a girlfriend. How do you heal? Journalists asked. You never heal, the younger admitted. I still feel the pain every single day. Their lives changed so quickly, like mine did, just like mine did. 5. When raindrops or skipped rocks hit still river water, when geese or ducks poke beaks in glass, immersing heads to catch insects, fish, undulation forms a ring that ripples into circles, concentric, each one larger than the last. For parents of victims, loss is exponential, each new death magnifying memory, returning me to the river at the moment of disruption, the crest of catastrophe, when the darkness of moonless night first enveloped me. River waters, rippling eternal influence on my river's course. 6. The river of grief is long and unpredictable. Sometimes I'm floating in an inner tube on a lazy river, a necessary slowdown to process, reflect, allow myself to breathe. When the tide turns, grief is more like the Leona, with its floods' potential wreckage, its droughts' ability to suck life from even those with faith.
Wow. Captured a lot of emotion and feeling with that. Wow. Amazing.
Well, I'm sure all of you cringe every time you see a new school shooting in the news. And there was another mass shooting today in New Mexico. I didn't have time to listen to the details yet, but it just seems never ending. And I guess it's always affected me, but it certainly affects me more since losing my own daughter when it's a child that's the victim, or many even worse.
No, very special. Very special. So we have about 5 minutes or so left. Anybody have one final question or comment, or we'll let Cathy play out the string?
You know,
I'll-
Kathy, you made me laugh when you said your grandmother used to say, "Damata sudeka." My mother used to chase me around the house and say, "Damata sudesera." Dio prostaque, Dio piso. Two in front and two in back.
That's great.
I never heard 10 though.
Yeah, I don't know. She had 10 children, maybe that's why.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, boy. Great.
A
Michael,
quick-
go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick comment. Cathy, thank you again. And I just admire Shadowbox, Dirt to Dirt, Enough, and then River of Grief, how you've been able to start in one spot, but as you work through the poem, you just hit on such big issues as the poems develop, poverty and to be close the mahogany box around her soul on the shadow box, incredible.
Thank you.
And Enough. I mean, that reminded me of Peter Balikian's poetry, who writes a lot of about the Armenian crisis. So I just appreciate it. It's just very moving.
Thank you. I
Very
really
moving.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Shall I end with something happy, John?
If you're happy and you show it, read a poem, boom, boom. No, great. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my chapbook for white-breasted nuthatches. This poem just became part of a nature trail in Spotsylvania or near Fredericksburg, let's just say that. And it's done with QR codes on a bench, which I thought was fascinating. So you use the QR code with your phone and you pull up the poem.
Oh, nice.
That way, you don't have to go through the expense of creating signs that are durable in nature. So I thought it was a great idea. White-breasted nuthatches. Wall walking edges, corners of portico bricks, look out on ledges, performing wry tricks. Our upside down acrobats shinnying down trunks. Forest habitats furnish foraging for chunks of tree nuts, acorns, wedged in, hacked open, nasal calls, staccato horns, enchant mates chosen, faded cavity nesters, woodpecker hole subletters. If you know white-breasted nuthatch, if you know nuthatches, you'll recognize their behavior in the poem. If not, they're fun to watch. You could look them up.
Good. If you have one more short one, we'll close out today's session. And once again, it's been fantastic. I shared with Cathy before you came on. She's usually on the other side of the desk, watching, writing copious notes and stuff. So she was very willing to come on the conversation side of the desk, which has really been absolutely fantastic. So if you have one more, lift us up. Obviously I got to study more birds before we talk the next time, because I thought the nuthatch was like some kind of candy bar or something. You had the nuthatch and then you had the peanut butter. No.
Oh, okay.
Tracy, you can see I have a problem.
So I'll end with sun drenched, because this is the time of year when you start to appreciate the sun and the depth of the warmth, as you feel it for the first time at this time of year. And it's called Sun Drenched, a little nod to some of my daughter's creativity. Spring sun bath, eyes closed, head tilting toward noonday sun, eye kaleidoscope, creates cordovan, crimson, rust, rose ebony, color changes in reds, rare serenity. Slight eye movements beneath lids give birth to yellow lake, forest mirrored, Shapes reverberate, echo, replicate. Glittered lenses, convex to concave. Sunshine's psychedelic rave.
Very nice. Thank you again. Your audience is applauding.
Thank you all. I really appreciate all of your attendance, listening to my poetry.
No, it's great. No, listen.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no, fantastic, really fantastic. Glad to
Thank you,
see
Cathy.
you read after being on the the other side. So it was absolutely fabulous. So
I appreciate your inviting me, John, and I appreciate all you've done for these few years now. I've been enjoying all of the different things. I hope you continue.
Wendy knows I get pretty buzzed every week.
Exactly. Thanks to all of you. Cathy, thank you. Of course, John, thank you. And thank you to our audience. We'll be back next week with more poetry.
Yep.
Thanks,
All right.
Wendy.